great time to prepare for a successful season of food preservation. I'm going to show you some tools and supplies that are used to create safe and high quality products. Some of them you may already have in your home. Others you may look for on sale at home stores or at thrift stores, or even find a friend that would be willing to share them. First up is a boiling water canner. You've probably seen these before. They are used to can high acid foods and acidified foods. Examples of these would be fruits, jams, jellies, pickles, and relishes. They have a rack in the bottom that helps keep the jar up off of the bottom so that it doesn't break due to boiling water. And they are deep enough to allow a jar to have a couple of inches of space above them to completely cover with water, as well as an inch or so for the boiling water to do its thing without coming over the edges and causing a mess. If you don't have space for a big boiling water canner, or would like to make something that would be a smaller batch, you can make a boiling water canner out of any pot that you might have. So this is a stock pot of sorts. I found a rack to fit in the bottom of it, and this is not tall enough to can quarts or even pints really, but it's perfect for making a batch of jelly or jam or pickle relish. I can put in about 5 jars in here, and there's plenty of room for them. The other kind of canner you might use is a pressure canner. Pressure canners are absolutely necessary for foods that are considered low acid, like vegetables, meats, and fish. So always know which canner you can use before you set out to do your canning. When you do start with a canner like this, know what kind of gauge you have. So this is a dial gauge canner, and each year I need to have this calibrated so that it is accurate. The other kind of gauge is a weighted gauge, and it is something that you don't need to calibrate. The other thing I would do each year is to check the seal to make sure that it's flexible and there's no cracks or breaks in it. Whether you boiling water can or pressure can, you need to have canning jars that are made special for the job. Canning jars are made of tempered glass that's heavy and withstands both high and low temperatures. They also have a rim or an edge on the top that is thick enough to create a surface area for a nice tight seal that we need. The canning lids are 2 parts. The rims can be used over and over again. The lids are one use only. If you remove the lids after you create a product, wash them and dry them, they'll last for a long time. When they start getting rusty or dented is when you should use them for another purpose or throw them away. The flat top with the sealing compound, as I mentioned, is a one use only. And when you get them ready to can, do not boil them on top of the stove. That boiling can actually degrade the sealing compound. Other tools that come in very handy for canning. One of them is a jar funnel. So this fits over the jar. It allows you to get product that's usually hot out of a pot and into a jar without making a mess. You get it there with a ladle. So any kind of ladle works. Move it in, and again, you have a safe and clean area. Having a plastic knife around can help you go around the edges of the jar to make sure all of the air bubbles are out. And then a tool to help measure headspace is also important. You might use a ruler, or this particular canning tool has 1/4 inch gradations. Headspace refers to the amount of space between the top of the lid and the top of your product, and it might be anywhere from 1/4 inch to 1 inch depending upon what it is that you're canning. Last but not least is this marvelous jar lifter. So this allows you to pick up a jar and move it around. Again, it's probably hot and heavy so that you can do this safely. If you're going to be freezing, Having airtight, rigid walled freezer containers will help keep the oxygen away from your product and reduce the likelihood of freezer burn. This particular plastic product has those rigid, airtight walls, and it has a lid that will snap quite tight. Bags that are made for freezing are made of different plastic than storage bags, so they will keep the air out. Glass can also be used. There are some other kind of supplies that are used in various canning projects that you might like to be aware of. If you want to make jams or jellies, there are a lot of different pectins that are used to thicken the jelly. Take your time when you're at the store because there are a lot of different pectins and they work in different ways. So if you want to make a low sugar jam or jelly, you would want to make sure that you bought a low sugar pectin. If you wanted a refrigerator jam or jelly, you want to make sure you buy the right pectin for that. So look carefully at labels because they can often look alike. And then when you go home, be sure to follow the instructions specific to the type of pectin that you purchased. If you're going to be making pickles, you'll want to have vinegar that is 5% acidity. And you'll find that on the label. It's very prominent on this particular one. The recipes that are written today for safety use 5% vinegar. Another kind of pickling product would be to use canning and pickling salt. This kind of salt has no additives added to it, which means that it goes into solution clearly. Some other salts like kosher salt or even table salt might result in a cloudy pickling liquid. Last but not least, I'd like to show you an example of an electric dehydrator. This particular version has a thermostat so that I can control the temperature, and it also has racks with different inserts that I might use for different kinds of products. This particular insert would be used for making fruit leather, for example. In the Willamette Valley, with the exception of herbs, you pretty much need to use a heat source in order to dry foods before they get moldy. An oven can be used, but it's very inefficient from the standpoint of electric or gas use. So if you plan to do some serious dehydrating, I would highly recommend looking for or borrowing a dehydrator.